Well, hello, HR Tech Groovers. Here we are back again. It's been a little bit. It's been a bit of time since we last caught up and did an update to our followers in this format. But it's terrific to be back again. You both well?
Yeah, Josh, great to be back again. Really, really sorry that, all of us, we tried for some time, and finally back again as a team. So that's really, really good, exciting.
No, it's great.
Hi, Jane.
Hi, both. I know it's been a bit challenging with schedules lately, so apologies to everyone.
That's all right. We've all got lots of things on. But Sam, what are we talking about today?
Yeah, look, we were, brainstorming about the topics, and my go-to topic will, always be somewhere around data. And I'm really looking forward to our discussion today. We haven't really, dived into some of the data challenges that we used to, or we have faced, and what we, working with in our projects over the last few years. So, yeah, I was really interested to hear your thoughts, and Jane's thoughts around what are the data issues that you have seen, and just have a general chat about what we can do to improve those situations.
Yeah. Look, I think there's a few things. I mean, like we've often had things come in threes, Sam, but I think there's probably three from my perspective. I think the first one is actually not necessarily having a good handle on organizational structures and the way teams are formed. So, for example, not consulting HR in the beginning around team formation, the way reporting structures and the like should be, can really not set you up on a good path for successful data migration. The second one's probably more around not having the right resources for that job. So, recognizing that some of that pre-prep work of getting your data clean and spending time on that, I think is actually really important. And so having the right sort of people assigned to that is critical, and equally not having that assigned doesn't put you on a good footing. And probably the third one, which is an extension maybe of the second point, is perhaps having people who, whilst may be good at data migration, but may not have an intimate understanding of the data that they're actually looking at. And so what I mean by that is sometimes when you've got someone that has an understanding of data and a HR lens through it, they can start to identify things quickly and easily. And I think having that sort of expertise involved in that cleanse probably saves you a lot of time and can maybe even error trap, if you like, or identify things before they become downstream issues. They're probably my three, Sambit.
That's great. That's really very pertinent, as in my current project as well, working with the right resources, as you said, and also with the HR team, because they have the domain knowledge. We come from a very technical space at times, so their inputs are really, really helpful. Thanks, Josh, excellent points. um, uh, so over to Jane. Jane, I mean, you've been working with data integrations, payroll, HR systems as well, and we'll be really interested to hear your thoughts around data issues.
Thanks, Sambit. So there's probably three, I guess, areas that I'll touch on. One is your data gathering process. Second, position management and job catalogue, which I know I've harped on about before, and your cutover planning. So I guess first around data gathering, I think it's really important to be able to create a repeatable data gathering process to pull that data more than once, and you want it to be consistent when you're actually pulling it. So understanding where your data is coming from, how you're going to get that data will, I think, really set you up for success. I think getting those data templates prior to starting, if you can get them from your vendor, will be really helpful, because it'll let you understand exactly what you're going to need and what formats you're going to need when you're going to pull that data. And to Josh's point too, do as much data cleansing as possible prior to actually starting on the project. I think you can underestimate sometimes the amount of, I wouldn't say useless information in your system. So it's good to do a bit of culling. And be clear on your end state reporting needs when it comes to that, because there may be fields that you don't currently capture that you're going to need to capture when you go to your new system. And just finally, on the data gathering, give your data person the time they need to actually pull that data. I think sometimes we can underestimate, especially if you've got multiple data sources, how long it takes to actually pull that information. So the second point on job management and catalogues, I know that I've spoken about this in prior vlogs, but getting clear on that before you start your data migration is so important. You don't want to get to data migration and then trying to figure out what positions match what jobs. It becomes a bit of a nightmare, especially when you have to consult multiple different people, which you probably would have to, because you would have to speak to your REM, your HRBPs, etc. So it can become a bit of a beast. And thirdly, just around cutover planning, I know this is not directly related to data migration, but it is really around that data integrity. I think clear planning around cutover will really avoid some confusion around, what's our catch-up processes, transactions versus what's new transactions. And I especially think that is for payroll as well. I think sometimes we can neglect payroll when it comes to the cutover process sometimes, and really understanding the impact that it has on them, understanding what transactions that are coming through to them and what they actually have to process. Also, with the cutover planning, generally you're going to have really tight deadlines. So the more prepped you can be when you're doing your cutover planning, the better and easier it's actually going to go when it comes to actually doing your cutover. So I guess those are my top three, Sam, but I know you've been part of many implementations across many systems. You also are Data Oracle. What's your advice?
Actually, I agree with both your points so strongly, and I mean, I will probably elaborate some of my examples, which is very closely related to the topics that you have raised. The first point for me is, Jane, as you mentioned, the repeatable process. It is also kind of very close to my heart, because I think there are two specific areas where we spend a lot of time in data. One is converting the data into the workbooks that we need to load into the system, but the other part is to extract the data and cleanse the data, right? As both of us and all the three of us have been chatting about. The repeatable process for me is using something like a tool, even if it is an Excel or macro or Alteryx, which I have been using over the last 3 years, to build that automation so that the transformation and the generation of the EIBs is taken care of. So the time then for me and my team will be focused on cleansing the data. I don't want to spend time on both. I want to save time in one area so that I can invest my time in the cleansing, because that for me is, it can break integration testing, it can break parallel testing, it can, give you nightmares post go live, which, I'm sure, some of, all of us have, had close encounters with.
We've all been there, Sam, but
We have indeed.
It is, yeah, look, so that's so definitely, very, very strongly I feel about that. The second thing is, I see that, and this is also, I've made a mistake myself, is in some of the projects we are now implementing HR and payroll, right? So some of the business cases we are seeing is implement Workday but also implement a payroll system. And what happens is, when the payroll data or the HR data migration happens during the project, I've seen that the old payroll system's data is taken out and then sent to the new payroll system, and the old payroll system data is also sent to Workday system. And then, we are trying to do the integrations and all of that. But over the period of the project, I've seen that the new payroll and the new Workday are not in sync, because some team member is uploading new Delta data into the new payroll system, which I have no clue, what has gone in, and we have to catch up and, do that. And that is all, slowly going out of alignment. And we faced, after go live, we spend weeks to reconcile the data, because the systems were, disparate. And so for me, establishing Workday as the source of truth would have meant that I would have constantly sent the data to payroll, new payroll system, cleanse that data in one system, and then, it would have been a better position for us at go live. So this is what we are doing now. So if I have an HR system, I want to establish that as a source of truth very early in my project. So I fix it in one system, and all the downstream systems will, get that clean data. And the last part, I think both of you have also touched, is the audit. So Josh, you had an excellent point about having a business lens on the data, and Jen, you also mentioned about audit. So what we are doing now is, because we have established the source of truth, which is Workday, and we know it's not correct or not in a good state, but we are now auditing based on all the mandatory fields, like blue collar employees should not have a white collar salary data, for example. The hires, the duplicate employees, the terminations, they're all reconciled, for example. So those are the things we are reconciling, auditing on a weekly basis, but also getting the HR involved to fix them. So, and they can also comment that, you need to add this audit rule, that audit rule. So those are the things we are putting it in place, so that they are across post go live. The issues are not new to them. They have gone through the process, they have fixed that issues, so they're more closer to those issues. So yeah, so those are the things that I want to share.
Thank you, Sambit. And it's such an important piece, this, and getting, I think both you and Jane really touched on the fact that putting the work in now really does set you up for success in the long term. And conversely, not doing the work really does set you up for a bumpy ride post go live. So I think there's some really terrific call outs. Probably a segue to my question then. Organizations are always at different phases, listening to some of the our advice, depending on where they're at in the journey. Jane, let's start with you. What would be some of your advice to organizations who are about to embark on some of these, similar journey? What should they do? What should they focus on?
I think just don't underestimate the time and effort that has to go into your data migration and your data integrity process. And just don't rely on the fact that you've cleaned all your data prior to go live. Make sure you've set up those reports post go live to make sure your systems are in sync, even if you've got integrations, because we all know that integrations can go wrong. And I think the more you can do before you go live, the less visible it is to people, and it builds that trust in the system as well.
Thanks, Jane. And how about you, Sambit? What's your advice?
Look, my advice would be that I don't think, if we are implementing a new system and we are taking in data from a legacy system, that we should just assume that we can just lift and shift the data. I don't think that applies when we are implementing a new system, which is, the architecture is different, the data model is different. So um, I am sometimes very attracted to automate the mess, but that is where I come in and also tell myself that I should not take the shortcut, because that messes up the integration testing and parallels later down the lane. So yeah, there's a lot of time we need to spend on reviewing the mapping tables, getting the business to sign off those mapping tables based on which the transformation happens, and then doing the audits. So those are the things I would like to share, Josh.
And Sambit, thank you for calling out as well that you raise a good point about the sort of the sign off. I think sometimes these project rituals, you can get caught up in that, but they're actually really important, not only symbolically, but also from a mind state perspective as well. Getting these decisions right, thinking about the information value in the new system, I think for organizations is actually really important. Data and the data within systems is like the crown jewels. And if we think about people, insights, and data, that's some really important information that it may be a key input to a business case, which is around our ability to scale and mine our people analytics, and not, Jane, you said it really well before, rubbish in, rubbish out, right? If we don't get it up front and get it right, then you're right, you're just automating a mess. And the information value, it goes from being the crown jewels to yesterday's trash. And that's not a successful approach to data and transformation. So I think, yeah, as you both called out, it's an important piece to put the time in. My thoughts after hearing both of you, I guess from a sponsorship lens is, for the sponsors out there who are either about to embark on sponsorship of these programs or considering, really make sure, as we've encouraged you in previous posts and our podcast, to think about and ask the questions around what thought is going into the data and the structure and the that work. I think as you've both highlighted with your wealth of experience, getting it right and setting the time for success pays dividends in the long run. So, again, sponsors, hopefully this has been an interesting conversation. Hopefully it's also given you all some food to think about. as you embark on your programs. So thanks again, HR Tech Groovers. I'm glad that we've been able to get together and talk about what's been a really interesting topic, and hopefully interesting for our listeners as well. So until the next time, that would be bye for now.
Thank you.